Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
And here we go again.
Yeah, we just get hit with so much stuff.
We do. We get hit with a lot of technology problems.
Yeah, and Cindy's been seeing orbs, black orbs.
Yeah, I
and and actually, our entire sound system went on the fritz earlier. I was trying to play a video from I think it was Mr. MBB, and it was just sounding like a communication from Zog off of some strange planet.
And that was right after I saw that black orb that looked like a bat. So we know we're onto something good when technology starts to fail.
So right now, it may be pretty obvious to many people that we're getting very, very close to a global conflict. And this is something that's been orchestrated. It's a symphony of destruction that we've been talking about. And, I've made videos 3 years ago talking about what's happening right now. And, it's just kind of on schedule.
Mm-hmm. It is. And for many different reasons, this is very important, this particular thing here.
Well, what you have right here is you see the two countries there over to the right, and that yellowish, mustardy yellowish is Azerbaijan, and the green is Armenia. And as many know right now, there's conflict going on, and it's escalating very fast. We've had planes downed, we've had many tanks destroyed, soldiers definitely losing their lives, civilians as well. And this is a conflict that's been kind of on and off again for a while. And it really goes back quite a ways. But when you get down to this, it could go all the way back to the Tower of Babel when you get down to it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't quite understand the significance of this, but it is significant. And I'm really glad Mike is here to explain.
Well, if we look right here, we have Iran. And then we have Turkey here. And then over here we have now Russia. And these two countries were part of the Soviet Union before it broke up. Georgia's right over here as well. And our good friend David Devine was just saying, remember I was telling you, Georgia was one of my top picks for places to be during the Grand Solar Minimum, if not for potential political issues. A very good spot. And, right now also there's a pipeline that goes through this area that brings critical oil, and that's a big point of contention as well. There's a lot of things going on here. There's so many things going on here. But the one thing that we could be pretty much assured of is it's not necessarily spontaneous. It's actually part of a much bigger plan.
It is, and it goes really deep, and this could be a huge trigger thing.
Yeah, well, I think they are going to use it as a trigger for sure. So when we look at this area, and again, Turkey is just to the west of Armenia here, and actually in times past, all this part of Turkey really was part of Armenia, including Mount Ararat, which interestingly enough is where many people that are Bible scholars think that Noah's Ark came to rest. The other thing that's curious is this is where the Caucasus Mountains are, and the Caucasian race comes from the Caucasus. At least that's what they tell us. And really, what is the Caucasian race? Is it perhaps, as some have kind of hinted at in their studies, is it perhaps leftover remnants of Atlanteans?
Things that make you go,
Most definitely. So it's an interesting area. It is a critical area. It has changed hands militarily over the centuries and millennium many times. And Albert Pike, who is a 33rd or was a 33rd degree Mason, actually a major part of the Confederacy, and also, well, many think he foretold the 3 world wars back in 1871, the year of the Banking Act that made the United States a corporation, and also the Great Chicago Fire. And he said the Third World War must basically come to be by pitting two major factions against each other. A political Zionist, which would include Christianity, because Christianity, for the most part, has been in support of Israel. When you get down to it, Christians have supported Israel more often than not. And anything that Israel does, not everybody, but on the whole, if you are a Christian, you tend to support Israel because you tend to believe that God gave Israel as the promised land to the Israelites. Now, Albert Pike said that World War III is going to be basically a war between Israel and Christianity against Islam, and that they must eventually mutually destroy each other. That's part of the bigger plan.
Yeah, and unfortunately, time and time again, it is like when you see big wars, it has a lot to do with religion when they're supposed to be bringing in peace and hope and love, and that's just not the case here.
Yeah, it's like you want to scream out, okay, so you're very devout and you believe in God. Do you believe God is love? And many times people say, yeah, God's love. And then why are you killing each other? In the name of religion, why are you killing each other? And just think about, the use of pride in a country, pride in your religion. Again, it's all ego. And it's manipulating the ego to get people to do atrocious things. And when we look at these two countries, Armenia is almost entirely Christian, and Azerbaijan is almost entirely Muslim. So they're obviously right next to each other. They're on a collision course with each other. They've fought already in the past. And, perhaps they are the fuses that are going to light that WW3. As right now you have reports that Turkey is actually actively militarily involved. And Turkey is also involved in a lot of other places, Syria and Libya as well. And I've been talking about Erdogan wanting to be the caliphate of the restored Ottoman Empire for several years now. And really, that is really his ultimate goal. As even though these guys, these entities, these beings, these leaders in the political realms are ultimately tools, they still have their egos. And that's how they're controlled by. They're controlled by their greed for power. They're controlled by their lust for wealth, and everything that comes with it, and stoking the old ego. And so, it has nothing to do with being, for instance, a true Christian, a true follower of the teachings of Jesus, who said, turn the other cheek if somebody, slaps. If somebody needs your cloak, give them your tunic too. I mean, completely anti-Christ and anti-Christian.
It is, and it's really curious how the biggest trigger that could trigger this whole thing happens to be religion again.
It is, to the point of genocide in some cases. So what we need is the people of the world to wake up. We need the militaries of the world to lay down their arms and say, you know what? Hey, maybe I am being manipulated. That's going to take people like you and me and Cindy and others out there to really, really spread the word and let people see how they're being manipulated. They're manipulated not just through religions by taking a side, left or right. And it's really disheartening to see some people that are very, very informative, resourceful, trying to bring in positivity and do right, do good, try to awaken the masses, and yet there they are taking a side, and they're not recognizing that they're still being used as pawns. And pawns, are sent to slaughter, whether we're talking chess or we're talking, real war, just as, it's been the case all the way on down through history. But remember, every pawn is also valuable, because a pawn can also turn into any other chess piece if it makes it to the other side. If they wake up, who knows what they can be. And that's part of Genesis 11. The whole world had one language and one common speech. Recognizing, too, that these come out, everything that we see biblically for the most part comes out of the Sumerian texts, which are much older, at least 1,200 years, 2,000 years older in most cases. And as people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, come, let us make bricks, bake them thoroughly. They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered all over the face of the whole earth. Zechariah Sitchin says the word for name is mistranslated. It's Shem. And he thought it was more about making rockets and being like the gods, and perhaps being able to leave the earth and go out and colonize space just like the gods did. Because, again, why is the word Elohim used in the plural? And why would God say this? But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the people were building. If that's the omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent creator of everything, he doesn't have to come down from anywhere. So obviously that's not the real God with a capital G. And also, there's so many other references to the sound of the Lord walking in the garden. Would the creator of the universe make a sound when his feet are hitting the ground? Does he have feet? All this is really obvious when we start looking at the Sumerian scripts and we start looking at other histories from around the globe. And then why would he say this? The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, and nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Well, they're organized. They're not fighting against each other. They're working together. They're building things. They're being constructive. They're getting along. You would think that the real God would want that. Why would the real God want people split up, not able to communicate, and fighting with each other continually? Well, it's obvious that it's not the real source of everything. And, when we look at, again, the Sumerian texts, which say that mankind was created to do work for the gods as a slave race, well, then things seem to make a lot of sense. As well as the concept of original sin. Because, you eat of the knowledge of good and evil, but if you eat of the tree of mortality, right, the fruit of the tree of immortality, then you'd be like the gods. So, let's basically make 97% of their DNA junk, quote-unquote, DNA. Let's clip their wings, so to speak, and let's dumb them down just enough so that they'll be a useful tool. But again, if you guys have been following, we talk about the jiva. And the jiva in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism is the immortal soul that lies within every single being. So even if they did alter our body or even create this body from something else, they didn't create our souls. So, they are beings like we are beings. And so we have source within us, and we have the powers that they have, we can have. And that is why they are trying to always clip our wings and keep us down. So come, let us go down there and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So who's he talking to? Well, the traditional fundamentalist point of view is, well, that's God the Father talking to God the Son and the Holy Spirit. Really? How logical is that? And if Christ wasn't incarnated yet, then, and Christ said, I and the Father are one, why would he differentiate in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. It's just trying to basically make some congruity of a story that has been fabricated to hide the real story that's going on. And so the Lord scattered them from all over there. Think in terms of alien invasion. Think in terms of Vimanas in the sky shooting laser beams and missiles and things like that down at people that are scattering and running for their lives. And so they stopped building the city, and that's why it's called Babel, because there the Lord confused their language of the whole world and then scattered them all over the face of the earth. And when we see Deuteronomy 32:8, it talks about God holding a council of the gods, of course, then translated again to say God, and translating it to Israel, and so it's all been so distorted. But just look to the Sumerian stories, look to the traditions around the world, look to the wars of the gods that are spoken of in the Bhagavata Purana, in the indigenous people around the world, Native Americans as well, over in Africa as well. They all know the story. There's different beings that have been running the show here. And so when we look at the history of Azerbaijan, it goes back like 5,000 plus years. So it's a very, very ancient history and an ancient land, and split up. As we see here, Armenia, and the history of Armenia, also very ancient. This is ancient Armenia from 3500 BC, so 5,500 years ago, to 520 BC. And it is one of the oldest countries in the world with a recorded history of, that's right there. They're saying 3,500, but if it's 3,500 BC, it's 5,500 years. Is very much an interesting area for sure. And when we look at the cataclysms that we've had that seem to come really about every 6,000 years, with a much more major one every 12,000 years. They're cyclic, but are they really natural? Or is it when humanity gets to a certain point of population, a certain point of technology, that the controllers need to restart humanity?
When we reach a certain point, when we understand that things are not as they seem, there's something else controlling beyond our grasp, beyond our reach, things that we don't understand. And it seems like that's about the time when they got to put the kibosh on it.
Yeah, and time to do the great big reset by getting them to do the dirty work themselves, by getting us to fight each other and, have another world war and perhaps another nuclear war, as there is evidence of nuclear war in the past at several sites around the globe. And we will talk about that in the future as well. So what we have to do is you and I and all of us that are awake and understand this big picture, keep spreading it and refuse to take part in it. So, do not take up arms against your brother or sister, because when you get down to it, every human on the planet is your brother and sister. And we need to recognize that. We need to come back together and to work as one and not allow ourselves to be pitted against each other. So if we could get all the soldiers of the world to lay down their arms and recognize they're being played by pride and through religion and through politics, because ultimately, what better religion is there than just love and sending out love and compassion and peace? The majority of the people around the world would love to have peace.
Well, they absolutely would, and to be accepting of one another's belief systems, and even, understanding that people are flawed and let them have their flaws, but don't aggravate the situation.
And many times the flaws are also created by atrocities. And there's been atrocities on both sides of this. And, there's been attempted genocides here as well. And again, we have to stop looking at each other and labeling each other. And instead, we need to start to work together to rise above this and to overthrow the controllers that have been controlling this planet.
And a lot of times, energetically send light on the situation. It can do more good than you think.
And always, guys, thank you for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. We could not do it without you. Much love and much peace to you all. Be prepared in these times, but hold love in your heart. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.